Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're looking at something really fundamental, I think, to our lives.
Yeah.
How we see each other, especially the people closest to us.
Mhm.
And it's not just, passively observing. It's more like looking into a mirror that doesn't just reflect what's there.
Yeah.
It actually seems to shape who we become.
Yes, exactly. It's about understanding that perception in our relationships, it isn't some one-way street.
Right.
We're not simply taking in data about someone else. Our very act of seeing them, where we put our attention, it really plays a role in what comes up in that space between us.
Yeah, it makes me think of catching my reflection when I don't expect it. Like in a shop window, maybe when it's getting dark.
Okay.
And there's that weird mix of familiarity, but also something slightly alienating. It's me, sure, but maybe not quite how I imagine myself.
That's a wonderful image. It really touches on a core idea from Gestalt psychology, this figure-ground relationship. What we focus on becomes the figure, right? It stands out against the ground of everything else. So in that reflection, your image is the clear figure.
Against the window, the street.
Precisely. And that slight unease you mentioned, that often comes from the gap between that external image, the figure, and your internal sense of self, the ground it sits on. Our perception is never neutral. What's inside us shapes what we actually see outside.
So, okay, let's take that idea. What happens when that shop window is another person? Especially someone we love, someone we're deeply connected with. How does seeing ourselves through their eyes get so much more, complicated and sometimes unsettling?
Well, consider this maybe as an analogy. In quantum physics, there's the observer effect.
Right, where observing changes the outcome.
Exactly. The act of observing a particle can fundamentally change its state or behavior. It's a bit out there, but we see echoes of this in human relationships. When a partner perceives you in a certain way, it's not just passive recording.
It's doing something.
It's doing something. Their perception becomes an active force, almost a kind of co-creation of the reality within that relationship.
That's a really powerful way to think about it.
Mhm.
It makes you think about arguments, how the exact same conversation can be experienced so differently. Like one person feels it was a passionate debate, lots of energy, maybe even productive, but the other person feels it was just damaging, a real conflict.
Absolutely. It's not just about the facts of what was said, is it? It's the lens, your own history, your mood right then, your expectations. These act like filters.
Shaping what you even notice.
Exactly. Shaping what you emphasize, how you interpret everything. And in close relationships, these filters are, let's say, particularly potent because they're layered with shared history, hopes, fears. Essentially, our inner worlds projected onto the other person.
So it's like those Rorschach inkblot tests.
Precisely like that. You see an ambiguous shape, the ink blot, and your inner state dictates what you perceive in it. A bat, a butterfly. Our partners, in a way, become these living ink blots for us.
Okay, so my hopes, my anxieties, maybe patterns from my childhood, I'm kind of layering these onto my partner, and they're doing the same back to me. It's a projection, but it goes both ways.
It's absolutely mutual. It's this dynamic dance of perception. Our individual stuff gets woven together in the shared space, the relational field. The lines blur a bit between self and other within that field.
That really clicks. It helps explain why sometimes my partner and I can remember the same event so differently. We're both looking at the same relational ink blot, but we're seeing totally different pictures.
Exactly. Now let's go back to that shop window reflection for a moment. What makes that glimpse sometimes feel unfamiliar?
Yeah, what is that?
It points, I think, to the dissonance between how we experience ourselves internally, which is often quite fluid, multi-layered, changing,
Right, moment to moment.
versus how we appear externally, which others perceive.
Yeah.
And that external perception often relies on cues that seem more fixed, more like a static form.
Okay, so inside, I might feel really adaptable, like I can handle anything. But my partner, maybe seeing me hesitate over a choice, they might perceive that as me being indecisive or even passive-aggressive, depending on their filter.
Perfect example. Their perception is built on what they can observe, your tone, your expression, your body language, your actions or lack thereof. It's an interpretation based on external data.
Which is always incomplete.
It's inherently incomplete, yes.
Yeah.
But not necessarily wrong. It's focused on a different figure standing out from the ground. You're focused on the figure of your internal adaptability. They're focused on the figure of, say, observed hesitation. Different figure ground focus within the same shared reality.
So their view, even if it clashes with my self-image, isn't automatically incorrect. It's just Another valid way of organizing the available information, a different facet standing out.
Precisely. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. If their perception influences how they interact with you, and maybe even how you start to act within the relationship.
Then who I am isn't quite so fixed.
Exactly. We're not just being passively observed, we're being actively shaped in subtle ways by that observation, by that perception.
Wow. That really challenges the common idea of having this solid, stable, unchanging identity, doesn't it? It suggests we're much more reactive, maybe, more malleable than we tend to think.
Think about what happens if you stare intently at your own reflection in a mirror for a long time. Have you ever done that?
Maybe as a kid, it gets weird.
It gets weird, right? Your sense of self can start to feel a bit shaky, disconnected, even destabilized. It's called the mirror gazing effect by some.
Okay.
In a somewhat analogous way, a partner's sustained attention, their consistent way of seeing you, their gaze, can actually reshape your self-experience over time.
How so?
Well, certain traits you possess might be brought into sharper focus, amplified even, simply because they are constantly being reflected back at you.
Like they keep noticing my sense of humor, so I become more aware of it, maybe even lean into it more.
Exactly. Or conversely, perhaps they focus on a perceived flaw. That sustained attention can make that aspect loom larger in your own awareness. Other traits, ones they don't notice or reflect, might fade slightly into the background of your own self-concept.
So their consistent focus sculpts my experience of myself.
In a way, yes. Identity isn't some static thing we own. It's more like a continuous process, unfolding in real time within the dynamic field of our relationships. Our partner's perception gets woven into our own sense of self, influencing the very figures that define who we believe we are.
So the goal isn't necessarily to force my partner to see me exactly the way I see myself. That might even be impossible.
It likely is.
It's more about recognizing that their perspective, however different, offers a unique lens. Another valid data point on who I am, at least within the context of us.
Beautifully put. The aim isn't necessarily perfect alignment of views, but maybe a deeper appreciation for the relational space itself, the space between us. Because it's within that space that new facets of ourselves can actually emerge, possibilities we might never have discovered alone.
This makes me think about the relational field concept you mentioned, this sort of invisible web connecting partners.
Yes, the field of awareness that exists between and encompasses both individuals. Every interaction, every glance, every assumption sends ripples through this shared field.
And it's something we create together.
We co-create it constantly. Each person brings their own perceptual habits, their history, their figure ground tendencies into this shared space. Misunderstandings often happen when we're each focusing on different figures within that field, or maybe interpreting the same figure through totally different personal lenses.
It's like we're both standing in the same room, looking at the same scene. But I'm fascinated by the painting on the wall, and you're focused on the crack in the ceiling. And we might assume the other person sees what we see.
That's a great analogy. Or think of something like improvisational jazz. Each musician is listening intently, responding not just to the notes, but to the feeling, the intention behind them. They build something together, moment by moment, something spontaneous and new that couldn't exist without that mutual listening and responding. Relationships are similar. Each partner's actions, and crucially, their perceptions, shape the constantly evolving music of the relationship field.
Now, you mentioned something earlier that sounded a bit paradoxical that relationships often thrive on. Incompleteness. How does that work?
It does sound odd at first glance, doesn't it? But think about the idea of unfinished business in Gestalt terms.
Okay, like unresolved stuff from the past.
Exactly. Unresolved issues, often from our families of origin or past relationships, that continue to subtly influence how we act and react in the present. We might, unconsciously, be looking for something from our current partner.
Like what?
Oh, perhaps the validation we never got from a parent, or the sense of security that was missing earlier in life. We project these old needs, this unfinished business, onto our partner, hoping they can finally complete that picture for us.
So if I find myself, say, constantly needing reassurance from my partner about their feelings for me, that might actually be tapping into some older unmet need, my own unfinished business that I'm trying to get them to fix.
It very well could be. And the way your partner reacts to that, maybe they feel pressured, maybe they withdraw because it feels overwhelming, that reflection, however uncomfortable.
Yeah, it can be really uncomfortable.
That reflection can actually be a powerful catalyst for your own awareness and growth. It can highlight what Gestalt therapy calls retroflexion.
Retroflexion.
Turning inward onto yourself, something that really needs to be expressed outward or resolved differently. So, recognizing these difficult reflections from a partner, seeing your neediness mirrored in their withdrawal, perhaps can help you start to own and integrate those disowned parts of yourself, the parts carrying that unfinished business.
So it's about moving towards a kind of wholeness, not by getting the partner to perfectly meet the old need, but by integrating that need within myself.
Precisely. A wholeness within the relational system, the US, rather than just fixing the individual me.
So the things that drive me absolutely crazy about my partner, they might actually be pointing towards something in me that I haven't fully dealt with.
It's a very real possibility, a powerful thought, isn't it?
It really is. Okay, let's shift slightly. You talked about attention earlier, how perception is active. If that's true, then our attention must be like the sculptor's chisel, shaping the reality of the relationship.
That's a good way to put it. Attention directs perception. What we choose to focus on consciously or, more often, unconsciously heavily defines our experience of our partner and the relationship itself. Think about change blindness.
Right, the psychology experiments where people don't notice huge changes in a scene if their attention is elsewhere. Like the gorilla walk into the basketball game.
Exactly that phenomenon. We can apply this to relationships. We can become blind to qualities or changes in our partners if they don't fit the mental snapshot, the figure we've already decided represents them.
So if I've decided my partner is, say, messy,
You'll likely notice every sock left on the floor, every dish in the sink. Those instances confirm your belief. They become the salient figure. But you might completely overlook or quickly forget the times they tidy up the living room or organize the bookshelf. Those instances don't fit the established picture, so they fade into the ground.
and that creates a self-reinforcing loop, doesn't it? My selective attention confirms my bias, which then directs my future attention.
Precisely. It solidifies these rigid patterns of perceiving each other, making it incredibly difficult to see our partner or the relationship dynamic with fresh eyes.
So breaking free requires a real conscious effort then to widen the focus.
It does. It requires cultivating a more flexible, open-ended attention. An awareness that is willing to let new figures emerge from the ground without immediately trying to slap a label on them or force them into old boxes.
It's about consciously choosing to look beyond my assumptions, isn't it? Being open to being surprised, even if it contradicts my comfortable established view.
Yes. Now, given all this subjectivity, different filters, selective attention, projections, how on earth do we ever actually connect? How does genuine understanding happen?
That's the big question, right?
It is. And one Gestalt concept that offers insight here is isomorphism.
Isomorphism. Okay, what's that?
It refers to a structural similarity, a correspondence between different domains. In this context, it suggests a kind of structural parallel between our internal experience, our thoughts, feelings, neurological patterns, and the external reality we perceive and interact with, including our relationships.
So the way my brain organizes things internally somehow maps onto how I perceive the world and my partner.
In a sense, on a relatively surface level, it helps explain why couples often develop shared mannerisms, inside jokes, similar ways of speaking. Their shared experiences literally create overlapping patterns, isomorphisms, in their neural wiring.
Okay, I can see that.
But on a deeper level, isomorphism is arguably the basis of empathy. Empathy isn't just intellectually understanding someone's situation. It's that ability to feel with them, to internally simulate or resonate with their emotional state. There's a structural correspondence between their feeling and your felt sense of it.
So it's like my internal landscape momentarily takes on the shape of their internal landscape.
A mirroring.
A kind of mirroring or resonance, yes. And achieving that requires actively attuning to your partner's experience. It means consciously trying to expand your awareness to include their perspective, their figure ground organization, as best you can.
So moving beyond just me and my perspective towards a sense of us and our shared field.
Exactly. Shifting from a purely dualistic me versus you stance to a more holistic, field-oriented one.
You also mentioned the power of insight earlier. Not just understanding, but that real aha moment.
Yes, insight. It's different from just accumulating information. It's a sudden, often visceral restructuring of your perceptual field. Everything clicks into place in a new way.
Like seeing the hidden picture in one of those optical illusion images. Exactly. And in relationships, these moments can be incredibly transformative. Suddenly you get it. You realize your partner's constant criticism isn't about you failing, but maybe about their own deep-seated fear of abandonment.
Or seeing that my own defensiveness isn't just stubbornness, but it's rooted in, say, a childhood pattern of feeling unheard.
Precisely those kinds of realizations. These insights have the power to dissolve old, stuck patterns almost instantly. They clear the blockages, you could say, allowing energy and understanding to flow more freely in the relational field again.
Like unclogging a pipe. Suddenly things move.
A good metaphor. It restores fluidity and creates new possibilities for connection.
This is also layered. We also touched on boundaries. You said they're essential, but also kind of illusory.
Another paradox, yes. Boundaries are absolutely crucial. They define self and other, helping us maintain our individual identity and integrity. Without them, we'd just be emotionally fused, which isn't healthy.
Right? Enmeshment.
Exactly. However, in deep intimacy, those boundaries naturally become more permeable. There's emotional merging, shared experiences shape us mutually, and as we discussed, even our brains can show mirroring activity, think mirror neurons responding to a partner's actions or emotions.
So there's this constant back and forth, this negotiation between maintaining our separateness and allowing ourselves to merge and connect deeply.
It's an ongoing balancing act, absolutely. Too much rigid boundary, you get isolation. Too much permeability, you risk losing yourself. Finding that dynamic equilibrium is key.
And finally, you mentioned symmetry, the symmetry of seeing.
Yes, the idea that perception is reciprocal. We shape our partner's experience of themselves through our gaze, just as they shape ours.
Yeah.
And often, the very qualities we most admire or perhaps most criticize in a partner can be reflections. They might mirror strengths we possess, but perhaps don't fully own, or weaknesses and vulnerabilities we project outwards because they're uncomfortable to face in ourselves.
So if I constantly see my partner as incredibly brave, maybe it's highlighting a potential for bravery in me. Or if I'm always irritated by their perceived laziness, perhaps I need to look at my own relationship with rest or productivity.
It's a very useful lens, yes. Recognizing the symmetry doesn't mean everything is just a projection, but it deepens our understanding. It reveals the incredible complexity of connection, how every relationship is this intricate tapestry woven from the threads of both individuals' identities, perceptions, and projections.
So wrapping this up, it feels like the core idea is that identity, especially within relationships, isn't this fixed thing we carry around. It's much more like a fluid process, something enacted within this shared field of awareness we create together.
That captures it well. It's dynamic, interactive, and constantly evolving.
And understanding that our partner's perception isn't just a reflection, but also potentially an invitation that feels really transformative. An invitation to see ourselves differently, perhaps, to grow.
Precisely. It opens up questions, doesn't it? How malleable are we really? How do we balance being shaped by those we love with maintaining our own core sense of self, our autonomy? There aren't easy answers.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
This has been such a rich exploration, though, thinking about how we see and are seen, especially by those closest to us, as this dynamic mirror. It really underscores how relationships are fundamental sites of self-discovery and becoming.
Indeed. The mirror isn't passive, it's active. It participates in our creation. And paying close attention to that process, to what's being reflected and how, offers endless opportunities for insight and evolution.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Think about a significant relationship in your life. Your partner, maybe a close friend, a family member. What parts of yourself seem to come into sharper focus through their eyes, through how they perceive you? What might their particular way of seeing you be inviting you to explore, or maybe even become? It's definitely something worth reflecting on, this incredibly intricate, powerful dance of seeing and being seen.